Not so much.
Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming along. Big crowd. All we expected, you can tell. Jammed out at the side. We'll turn it on, Morris. So you're welcome to Mum's memorial service. I have to give you some housekeeping stuff first. The guy at the RSA told me this because a lot of people here. Right, so if you go out that way and there's a fire, you can't get to the drill place, so don't go out that way. If there's a fire, go that way. Don't go past the bar, don't stop. Go that way, all right? The toilets are down the back, you can get up and wander around. There's no celebrant today, that's Tony and I are going to do that. We sort of wrote that, so it's a part eulogy, part tribute thing. But there's some other speakers as well, so hopefully it'll go all right. There's a few visual tributes because we're not really super good speakers, so there's some good visual tributes. And there's no singing, unless you want to sing along to the visual tributes, because Mum wouldn't like that. So, yeah, just check my notes. So there's a few people that can't be here today, and Robert's videoing them. Robert, stand up. This is Robert. In the tradition of every good Parlane function, he's dusty as today. So we have a live stream going. Uncle Graham and Carmel in Australia are watching, so it's nice to have them with us. Marilyn and Alan can't be here with us. They're from Auckland. They're watching. And who else do we have? Uncle Don and Auntie Rosalie, Parlane's in Christchurch, and Auntie Margie and Lorraine in Matamata. So there's other people that are watching as well, but I thought I'd just talk about the aunties and uncles. So you're going to hear from us, a bit of a eulogy thing. As I said, it goes on a bit, so we'll change who's speaking. The two visual tributes, and then we'll hear from the friends between the tributes. Because there's no, because Mum's like that now, so obviously there's no pallbearers and stuff. So we're gonna have some time later on when you can come and have a chat to Mum and put your photos and things with her and your memories, which will be quite nice. Don't all rush up here at the end because you can tell there's not much space. We'll talk about that on the way through. And then afterwards, you may have noticed there's a bowling tournament on out the back. So the bar, there might be people wandering in and out. You're quite welcome to have a drink here if you want afterwards. We're going to hang for about half an hour, 3/4 an hour here. But really, Mum's Shout is at the Manawatu Club, which is a bit bigger and a bit roomier, and there's some food there. And that's behind the Brewer's Apprentice, which is at Linton Street in Palmerston North. There's some parking outside that. You go round the back behind the pub, there's some parking there, but there's also some parking across the road at the council buildings. Okay, and I think, is that everything you want me to say?
You rock and roll, boy.
Okay, Tony's on now.
Oh, okay, Maire was born on the 10th of November 1941 in Wellington, the second child to Morris, Murray and Edna Dexter. She was a war baby, Maire was serving in the 25th Battalion New Zealand Infantry. He returned from war with an injury and Mum resulted. She was the second oldest in a family of 4 and the only girl, the apple of her father's eye, the only one, the only one apart from Graham who always got new clothes. Her eldest brother Graham still lives in Brisbane, her youngest Wayne is here with us today from Wellington, and her older brother Colin, who lived in Collerton, can't be here as he passed away a few years ago. Maire lived in Brooklyn, Wellington for the first 10 years of her life, and during that time the family was very close to both sets of grandparents, the Dexters and the Guthries. Family gatherings were frequent with many uncles and aunties nearby. Most of Mum's early memories and photos were of family from that time. That was the ones that you were just watching earlier of Mum. She was always proud of her Wellington roots and a connection to Brooklyn and Harrison Street where the families lived. Maire was a plumber and a drain layer, and the Dexter family moved with that job to the Manawatu and a house in the Pohongina Valley when Mum was 10. She attended Ashhurst school through until college. Maire and Edna were active in the community through the business Ashhurst Plumbing and various community activities. The Dexter family were good sports people. Edna was a golfer, the boys played rugby, and Maire was a handy boxer. Maire was good at athletics and any sport that involved hand-eye coordination. She passed that on to me. But Maurice got Locke's genes. Maire was one of the first presidents of the Ashhurst RSA, hence the connection here today, and his photo hangs out in the foyer. Long after this, Edna also participated in the RSA bowls and was head of the women's section here, again, part of why our connection's here. The Dexter family enjoyed outdoors and picnics and were often with the wider family. There is a story that we've heard of Mum jumping off the Raumai Bridge into the Pohongina River for a penny. She was terrified at the time, but did it for the penny. All good fun at the time, quite dangerous, but we never found out who gave her the penny. Maire spent her high school years at Tech, Queen Elizabeth College in Palmerston North. While she studied commerce, played tennis and squash, she rode in on the bus daily to school and made a number of lifelong friends at this school. Mum did well in her school years, successfully passing her exams and staying on to the 6th form. Maurice got these genes. Maire was an accomplished shorthand typist, and by the time she left school, a skill many appreciated throughout her working career. Mum stayed close to some of her friends, and they were planning to catch up over the years. 2 of them have contacted us and can't be here today. Margaret Brown, who was Margaret Wilson, writes, "Hi Tony, I'm sorry I can't be with you to share memories of Maire. I'm on holiday in the South Island. We had so much fun together, good and naughty, although the naught would seem very mild these days. It was a privilege to have her as my bridesmaid, and even though I moved away from Palmerston North, we kept in touch and met whenever I was in town. She didn't remember me when I visited the last few times, but she was her usual bubbly self. Love to all the family. Anne Wallace, who was Anne Thompson, wrote, I first met Maire when I started high school at Queen Elizabeth College, the year the school moved into the new premises in Rangatiki Street. Each morning, first thing, we were given a load to carry to the new building, walking both ways like a human chain. We became good friends very quickly. Our fathers were both plumbers, working from home, so we had that in common. Maire was a bus girl, so limited in-out school activities, but when something was special happening, she spent time at our place. Maire was very popular, as she was always happy, smiley, and ready to join in. She certainly was always ready to join in when the group of us would wag a class and go to our friend Hanny's place. That's Marilyn Hand's. It was just along the road from school. Once we were there, we'd play the latest music and dance. Little Richard, Elvis, and Pat Boone were her faves. Maire loved her tennis and was very talented at that and other sports. A group of us would quite regularly travel out to Ashhurst on the back of Hanny's truck. We would go to Raumae for swimming, socialising, and sandwiches supplied by Maire's mum. Maire and I shared a secret between us, and I don't think either of us ever told. In the fourth form, one of our subjects was art, which neither of us enjoyed. Together we made an appointment and went to see the headmaster, Dr. Spurdle, with a proposition. We asked if instead of art, the two of us could do dressmaking. After all, it was still creative. He gave his approval as long as the rest of the class was still happy to stay with art and that the dressmaking teacher would have us. Well, we couldn't risk all the class wanting to do dressmaking, so we never told them. We just quietly snuck off to dressmaking and worked away at the back of the Catholic school class with the teacher that had at that time. We made whatever we wanted, so we always had a great wardrobe. We both left school in 1957 and went into office-type jobs. Me in private practice and Maire to the ANZ Bank. We met occasionally for lunch until the year we both married. I moved to Wellington and then on to Hamilton. We kept in touch with Maire and Locke over the years and visited each other as we could. That special group of 1957 CSA girls have always had a special connection, and it's very sad that this year we're all starting to turn 80. A little bit of a dilapidated lot we are, but boy did we have some fun back then. Rest in peace, Maire, and thank you for your friendship.
Oh, very good. Okay, so because there's no celebrant, we are reading a lot and talking a lot. It's okay. So Mum left school, as you've heard, and worked at the ANZ Bank, and she continued to see those friends that she had from the bank for quite a while. And while she was there, she continued to play some tennis, and I think she took up squash then. She played that quite a lot, and one of her really good friends from squash, Mary's here somewhere, which is, there she goes, over there. She's a really cool friend, and a lot of you might know her, but I remember Mary because we spent a lot of time there. They lived in Wincanton Place by the Garys, and Christine's Mary's mum's goddaughter's Mary's daughter, and she used to do her hair all the time, which is pretty cool. So, so it's really nice to have Mary here. When she was single, Mum liked to dance quite a lot and to go to dances, so did a lot of you guys, I guess. It was pretty popular at the time, and this is, we believe, how the paths of Maire and Locke crossed. Because Dad was a townie boy, and he was not really any good at sport at all, and he dropped out of school when he was 15 to take up an apprenticeship, so they're almost like poles apart. Right, so he was a polisher with Pegdons in Palmerston North, and he was a bit more of a party goer, and he was into cars and music and girls. So Maire met Locke when she was in her late teens, so they were quite young, and was quickly introduced to the blood brothers, who are also the ones that are still alive are here. So Kev, Dave, and Pete. And this was a party at Rex England's place. The blood brothers realised that Locke was punching above his weight. And so they tried to make him settle down a bit and take this seriously, which he did, which is quite good. And around this time, Dad left Pegdons and set up his own business, where he conveniently banked at the ANZ that Mum was at, apparently. And he would go in there and bank each week. So she was often seeing her at the bank. May come as no surprise, some know, some don't. Whirlwind romance, Maire and Locke settled down with the approval of the blood brothers and all the parents to get married, but a little in the family way. And it wasn't me. Or Tony. So, it was sort of quite common. We're not entirely sure, but she was certainly on the way when the wedding was on. So that's... Mum finished work at the bank after they were married, and they moved to Longburn, to Pat Snoxall. Some of you know that's my connection with Pat. So we lived on the farm there, and Dad was milking there to make extra money while his polishing business was still quite small. Mum continued to work at the bank basically until she couldn't, and then the baby, whose name was Kevin, he was born in 1962. But we think he had, or we believe he had thalidomide poisoning, so it really lasted a couple of days. It was quite a sad time, but basically he's, we know about him, but there's very little else apart from that. So I came along in 1963. This is a tragic moment for me, because for many years I've told my children and several friends of ours that Tony's older than me, and I can't lie. Mum can't lie today. So 1963 I came along, as you can tell, no defects. I'm good as well. Tony Marie came along in 1965, and they dropped the Marie in about 1966, so just Tony. We moved to a place in Palmerston North in Hampden Street, which is in Awapuni. Seems like the flash area of town, but the house was fibrelite, had a ditch and a fence, and a witch lived behind it with a walnut tree. But we lived there for a while, and Dad's business grew and grew really, basically, and then we got a house, which was, that's how we ended up on College Street, which is the one that most people, or most of our friends at least, will remember. Tragically, my granddad, Maire, he took his life in 1965, not too long after that family moved to Ashhurst, which was also a bit of a tough time. That was sort of, I guess, attributed to a combination of maybe the war and just this, the sort of stoicness, I guess, of things at the time. So that was a bit rumpy, but there was a silver side to it because it really brought the Dexter family really close together. So we used to meet almost every weekend out here at Ashhurst at Wardy's place. And we'd have these parties and talk, and it was all great, so that was really good. Edna remarried Ted, a guy called Ted Ward from out here a few years later. His workshop's just down the road, Granddad's was just up here. And that's how she got the name Wardy, basically. So Wardy's house was basically also our other home. It was just a couple of blocks over here. At times, Guffey, who's my great-grandmother, lived there, and Bob, who's here, he lived there for a bit too while they transitioned into their new places. And so we always had these lots of family gatherings there for birthdays and Christmas, and Wardy's birthday was on Boxing Day, so we had a Christmas Boxing Day thing there, and we were really close to the Dexter family. So there's a reading here from Marilyn, who's Mum's cousin. She's got a reading she sent in, and she remembers this time. Lee's going to read that.
So the other part of Marilyn is she's the little flower girl on the bridal photos that were up earlier for Maire. Okay, so yesterday we had the news that you are now at rest. We will all miss the Maire we knew with her vigour and zest. We enjoyed lots of family gatherings on your beloved Palmerston North, at Ashhurst, Longbourn, Terrace End, and so forth. I always remember the many Boxing Day celebrations we all went to. There was always great family, great food, great hospitality, just to name a few. There has been many gatherings over the years. We have all had many. Many of these have been both happy and some of them sad. My childhood holidays were often shared with you and Locke. These great times with your lovely family we will not forget, or will not be forgot. Farewell, Maire, my favourite cuzzy bro, off to shine another place you go. Lots of love, Ellen and Marilyn.
Thank you. Right, Parlane French Polishing was growing into a larger business, and Maire was the perfect stay-at-home mum. Given Morris and I wrote this, we have our own personal biases. But she also managed the books for the business. We used to spend a lot of time at the office with Mum during this time. As the business grew, Mum and Dad purchased the house many of you will know and remember in College Street, our family home. We had a great time there. Morris and I wanted for nothing. Both Mum and Dad gave us the best upbringing ever. That wasn't close to Mum still played tennis and squash. Maire and Locke had lots of parties and visitors. Even some boarders from Australia, mates of Uncle Graham's, who lived there for a while. Mum taught us to do the dishes, make the bed, do the washing, handed over family recipes for things like the best ever veggie soup. They spent time on school and scout committees. And in the Rotary, and taught us to become independent and respectful children, but also to have fun. Mum pretty much had the measure of us, but on the odd occasion we needed to wait till your father gets home. Both Murray and Locke were into scouting. Dad had been involved all of his life, and Pat recruited them into the first gang shows. Dad was a cast leader, and Mum was a caller. They both looked after the uncooperative donkey that was featured in the 63 gang show. I think that was the first and the last animal in the Manawatu gang show, but it did seem like a good idea at the time. Mum was National Secretary for Pat Snoxel for the gang show. She took meeting minutes and was responsible for the library of sheet music and the scripts issued to gang shows around the country. They were also involved in some way with gang shows until our teens. Mum was awarded the Chief Scout's Commendation for good services to the Scout movement in 1977. She was very proud of this. This is the best bit. Mum was always interested in our friends and their families. She had a knack of bonding with them or pushing away the undesirable ones in a way that we didn't really notice. Whether it was rugby, tennis, hockey, sailing, scouting, guides or gang show, she struck a chord with many, and it would be fair to say she became adopted mum to a few with her welcome, loving nature.
So I'm going to talk about holidays now. Mum and Dad, they excelled at holiday time. Their passion was caravans. Many of you know this. I didn't really realise it. I thought about it a bit later now that I sort of have to do holidays and stuff. We would go away for like a month, right? And they would work for like a month, and then they'd be on holiday for a month, and we'd do that every year. And so it was pretty cool that they had thought through that, saved all the money, done all the hard work, and we had the whole month to play. We didn't think about it much at the time. But these holidays were pretty legendary. So pretty much what would happen is after Boxing Day at Wardy's, out here, we'd pack up the caravan and we'd head away and we'd go north till after Wellington Anniversary Weekend, so pretty much full on a month, right? So we'd go initially to Taupo on the way through to see the Parlane side of the family for like 2 nights. That'd be about all the old man could take. And then we'd pack up from there, and then we'd go further afield to Rotorua and meet up with the Gary clan, and that was all good. So party time for probably the rest of the month. So basically what we'd do is we'd pull up there in the caravan, and Dad would drive as far as the lead would go, which is quite a long way because it's a big, long, illegal lead. And then the Garys would put a plug into the caravan and they'd drive as far as they could go, and then we'd own the end by the lake, pretty much. No one could get across the place. It was really good. And then we'd just basically disappear. We'd be gone, and all we'd do is come back to sleep and eat. That was pretty much it. It was pretty cool holidays. Mum loved that holiday with the Garys. She treated their guys like they were sort of her own kids. And it was always pretty sad when we had to come back. It was only 11 months before we went back, so it was quite good. They went to Auckland at that time when we came back to Palmy. And then along the way, there's a funny story there. I remember Kev Burrows came up one time, and Kev used to be a car dealer, and he had a pretty big caravan too, and he bought a V8 Tirana, I think it was, or something like that. And he towed his caravan, or he thought he would, from Martin, I think, to Rotorua, and he filled up 2 times or 3 times or something. I think he did about 3 miles to the gallon. It was a big V8 thing. Ran out of gin money by the time he got there. Yeah, so around that time there was an oil crisis, not surprisingly. And that's when Carless Days happened and the towing stopped. So basically the caravan started going permanently because we couldn't travel, but that was a bit of fun. Stories about Mum, I just threw this in. Tony and I were talking about it. She was always a fashionable, trendy lady, right? She loved the fashion stuff. So I've written down some bullet points about why I thought she was fashionable. So she drank screwdriver, if some of you know what that is. She drank it only when it was trendy, and she stopped before it was sold in brown paper bags. Mum also smoked when it was trendy. And she stopped when it was not. And she smoked Pall Mall Filter, not B&H, like that. Mum wore miniskirts when they were a thing. They're a thing again now, but they were a thing a long time ago. Mum always made sure we had good clothes, but the good thing about that was she learned how to sew from Wardy. Wardy was actually a professional seamstress, and so she was pretty good. And so you could talk about clothes forever. Mum just made them all over the place. But the good thing was they were generally pretty cool. Like, she didn't force me to wear them when I didn't want to wear them. There was lots of dresses and stuff like that, which was pretty good. She did lots of knitting, and I had to wear jerseys, but whenever she did jerseys, they were never the same as Dad's, which is quite good. Mum went through this crocheting phase. Some of you will remember this story. This is a beauty. Mum went through a crocheting phase, and she was really handy, and she made one of those trendy miniskirt dress things. For the big holes in it, yeah. And it was lilac. It was lilac. I actually remember it, and I think you've got it.
And let me tell you, I can get it over 1 week.
So anyway, she made that to go out to a party. It was like a Motown thing, and she was pretty trendy with it, pretty flash. It was violet colour. Anyway, they went out to this party. Mum, you know, even though the dress was really trendy, she was quite discreet, so she got white bras and knickers and wore them under it. Someone decided to have a UV blacklight at the party. Hilarious. The old man thought it was great. So basically, when she got under the UV light on the dance floor, it turned, the violet went black and the white turned white. She looked like she had a white polka dot bikini on. And Dad reckons she got like loads of people coming over asking to dance until she so we've still got that dress. It's pretty good. So yeah. Mum also drank rosé when rosé was cool the first time. A thing called Ashhurst rosé. And there used to be lots of old bottles of that discarded around the place, I can tell you now. Mum taught Tony how to sew, and she was prolific at this also. And that's also in Tony's genes, not mine, I can't sew. Tony actually still works in a sewing shop in Wellington as a hobby. It's just like a weird thing. Mum sewed and knitted heaps of baby clothes, dresses, ball gowns, all sorts of stuff like that. But the other funny thing about that was she was a regular shopper at Trump's. I hope there's no ladies here from Trump's. So that's a flash clothing shop in town, and she used to go there all the time. They knew her by name and stuff like that. But half the time she brought clothes home on APRO, she'd pull them out, lay them on the floor, cut patterns of them, and sew them up again, and take them back to the shop. And she's still bored enough to be their friend for like years. They never knew what was going on. Yeah. When Lee was pregnant with the twins, she doesn't know this is in here, we threw it in later. Lee wanted some dungarees because they were sort of cool at the time, but the problem was that Lee was rounder than she was tall. Wasn't in the regular size. So Tony had a crack at some. She made some stripy ones. Tony didn't like them because they were stripy. She said they looked like a beach ball. Mum made some peach ones, and they were actually quite good. Lee wore them for a while, but unfortunately Dad got her in a lazy moment with a photo at one point, and that photo, there's various copies of that photo because Lee's just lounged back in this massive big orange dungaree that Mum made. It was quite funny. Mum also tried to encourage Lee to sew. Lee's mum taught her to sew a little bit. My mum tried to get her onto it, but between Mum and Tony here, she would go, I've sewed this, and they'd just rip it inside out, and they go, oh no, that seems to be missed. And that right, so Lee was never really took it on. Yeah, so they're the sewing stories. When Tony started at high school, it was time for Mum to head back to work, basically. So she decided she would do that. She started working at Teachers College in Palmerston North as a secretary and typist again. She was still managing the polishing business accounts, and at that time they had some property, so she was managing that property as well. And then it wasn't too long after that before Mum and Dad, this was around the caravanning time at the beach, realised the dream of buying the caravan business. So they bought that caravan yard, and that was a pretty natural progression because the caravanning had all started happening by then, and it was something they could both do together. It was really cool. So they would, do that. They were both licensed dealers, I think. So it was really good. And that's where we met the crew at the caravan club, and there's a bunch of them here today, which is really good. So every week that caravan club partied down there. They went down for the weekend, basically with a trailer load of grog and a pack of cards, and partied for the whole weekend. And it would just sort of rotate around the various camps. In fact, we took Dad's ashes down there and sprinkled them around some of those sites. Sorry, we weren't supposed to say that either. But it was pretty good down there. So every week that crew would go down and they'd party and do that sort of stuff. And the friends were also in town, so it was quite good. So we caught up with all of them and their kids as well during that time. The ladies from the caravan club, they started to do things like the gym and the fashion club, and they did a thing called Ladies Who Do Lunch. And so Jan and Maureen and Sue and Roz and all those ladies, they all did that. The boys were in the Commercial Travellers Club, I think, which is just a club that was around at the time. And this is where the idea of the sailing hatched from, basically. I believe I do know someone in the sailing club had the idea, and a few people jumped onto that. So that sort of cemented us being at Foxton, which was pretty cool. And at the best of times, the business was really, really going well. Dad sold loads of caravans down there, but he would basically pluck our caravan off the site. Something would come from the yard and stay on the site, so we wouldn't lose the site. And then we'd head away for the holiday. It's Taupo. Right. Turn to the pages.
You've got too much to say, you didn't say much. Carry on. No.
The caravan yard turned a little pear-shaped because of Piggy Muldoon, basically. So he had a thing called a sales tax, a leisure sales tax, which was 20%. And at that time, Mum and Dad owned all the caravans, that was the way it was, and they had to pay them back. Owed all the caravans, is probably what the old man used to say. So that nearly drove them broke, unfortunately. They lost quite a lot of money, but not the house, which was pretty cool. So that was sort of the caravanning thing. I want to talk about Mum's cars. It's going to go backwards a little bit and forwards, because Kev, you can correct me, and Pete, you can correct me if I've got anything wrong about the cars. But the ones I remember, a grey Austin A40 called Gertrude, I think was the first one. And I'm pretty sure the old man spray painted it in the backyard and wrote Gertrude on it in black paint. I do remember that. And she sort of liked it, but didn't, because it was one of those big floaty buses, but he got it for her. The second one was, he also hand spray painted, was an A30, which was a bit flasher. And he liked that. I think Uncle Wayne might have got a hold of it or something, but Dad painted it. She also had, she had that for quite a few years actually. She quite liked that. I was still way too young to be driving it. And once Dad was in business, we started to get some other cars. Styling cars, yeah. So they started out with Land Crabs. There was a Riley and a Mini. But there was a Morris Minor there for quite a while. I seem to remember that. And then things got even better. And then about that time, I started to learn to drive. And the Vauxhall Viva came along. The Vauxhall Viva was a beauty. That definitely came from either Kev or Pete because of the car it was. So that bore the brunt of my early driving, that car actually, because it used to go to Foxton and back. And it was still Mum's car, so thanks Mum, because I trashed that car. She never said anything about it either, and she was more than happy to let me keep using it all the way down to Foxton, all the way back, drinking and driving. Yeah, but as soon as I got my own car, she pretty much got rid of it straight away and got a Mitsubishi Celeste, which I was never allowed to do.
I'm pretty sure.
It was a brown one and it had cream leather. It was pretty flash, and she was pretty gutted when she had to sell that car, because I think Dad wrapped it up in a deal with a caravan and traded it out of it and got her a 4-door Primera grey one. It was gutted, no leather. So anyway, that's around the time the caravan yard all sort of collapsed, and Dad had the sales job, and then Mum decided to return to a secretarial role. Actually turned into the main breadwinner at that point. It was quite interesting. So she got a job at Mid Central Health, and she was originally in Mid Central Health's community child and family area. She did a computer course. Dad was always scared of computers, but she did one straight away. And because of those typing skills and her shorthand, she was sort of quite in demand. So she got promoted several times and ultimately ended up PA to the head guy for mental health, a guy called Ken Clark. Is that right? Yep. And she pretty much ran that whole department for a few years, and she had really good skills and passion and all that sort of stuff. So at that stage, Tony and I had left home, and the grandkids were firmly on the scene. So we were just across the road, and the Bernie family up in Wilson, and Mum was really good with all the grandies. Didn't matter what accent they had, because there was a few different accents. and she was always helping out, looking after clothes and treats and stuff like that. And she loved the birthday parties. She's awesome at birthday parties. Mum was the first one to dance, and she'd always be giving advice to all the children and the parents of the children. And more from them will come later, no doubt. They're going to talk later. And then around that time, so the house on College Street got sold because we were gone, and Mum and Dad moved twice, and finally ended up at Hayden Street, which some of you will remember, which was their retirement home. There you go, time. You're going really good on. So Mum had her money back then because she was working for herself and the main breadwinner. So the Nissan got the boot, and she bought a CRV, which she was really happy about. And Dad was banished to a little white van. A little white van that used to... And she also got the carport, and she got to put her golf clubs in the carport. Dad had to park out in the overhanging thing. Yeah, that house was going to be the dream house. It was sort of gradually improved to be more kid and party friendly, and there was a few parties there. And she, as I say, she was able to keep the car indoor. And that was all going really, really well until one day in 2010 when she spotted Locke mowing the lawns and the lawnmower wasn't running. That was, some of you will know that story, but that's the start of the old Locke demise. So he was out there mowing the lawns without the lawnmower on, which Mum thought was a bit odd, and that led to his diagnosis with cancer. So Mum basically looked after Dad there at home for quite a while until he needed hospital liver care. And that was a bit of a tough time, but he passed away in 2011. Mum went back to work at that point in time, but it wasn't really the same, I don't think, and so she retired not long after. She was 67, and at that point, new lease of life, sorry. So that's when she took up Probus, and she was fully into her gardens at that point. And she spent a lot of time with Wardy, who was still alive, still kicking around, and they used to do all sorts of things together. So Wardy, I think, lasted another maybe 8 or 9 years. After that, she died at 99. They were very close. I was going to do a separate story about Mum's schedule, but I won't. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. But she had this desk pad, and it sat beside the phone. It was a 1-week desk pad. Kids are all smiling, they'll remember it. Everything was on there, right? Everything that had to happen in the week. And so she was meticulous with that. So she'd be up at 6:30 in the morning, and she'd do all this stuff around the house, like dusting and stuff like that. And then she'd tick off the desk pad. Like if you went in the middle of the day, it was half ticked off. And she used to do that every day. So I always had the probus, the golf, the lunch with the ladies, I had the visits, so that's how we knew what she was up to. And the grandies, she even put that on there, visit the grandies. Mum had loads of time for them, and it was through this period when she would go and see all the school productions and the sports and make sure there was enough ice cream, was hundreds and thousands, and she had stacks of ice cream in the home for dinner. Mum moved into a townhouse in Julia Wallace when she was 70, yeah. And she was very popular there. She was okay when she moved in there. She had the townhouse for a little wee while, but she'd go to the happy hour. I know those of you who have danced with Mum, she clicks when she dances. Yeah. The clicker. Someone said yes. But she was doing that. So people at Julia Wallace enjoyed that. And so she'd do lots of those happy hours with her dancing jig, and she took a full part in that life. And in 2013 is when she was diagnosed with the dementia. Her dementia is actually Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, is a combination of the two. But basically meant she was a wanderer, to be fair. She took off a couple of times. So that's why she ended up upstairs in the dementia wing. She made an impression on that wing when she arrived, because she sort of knew she wasn't crook, but she also knew she wandered. So she knew she had to be there. So she participated quite a lot in group activities there, and she was popular with the people she called the inmates and all the staff. The staff particularly liked her, and we'd really like to thank them. I don't think any of them here, but they were really awesome to Mum, particularly the nurses and the ward home staff. They were very good, and we really appreciated them. Unfortunately, I think, well, this is only probably my opinion, but I think COVID made things a lot worse for Mum, because one of the things with dementia is you're supposed to get stimulation, you know, and that sort of locked her visits down. And so that's sort of where she took a bit of a turn, we think, or we believe. But it was really cool that Mum's really good friends kept visiting her through that time, and we were really happy with that. But as her Alzheimer's worsened, she needed a lot more care, and that's when we decided to move her to Wellington to be closer to Tony, because it was a bit of a trek up to Palmy. And so that was in October last year, so it all happened quite quick at that point. She still made some lasting impressions on the people in the Wellington homes, the 2 homes that she was in the hospitals. But as you're probably aware, she passed away on the 20th of December with most of the family with her. So it was a bit of a tragic time, but we knew she wouldn't want a big deal at this, this close to Christmas or that close to Christmas. So we'd sort of talked a bit about it. So that's why we're doing something now, because Mum was never big on putting a downer on someone else's parade. So that's not what we're going to do. So we're going to have fun and enjoy her life today. And there's our tribute. What you're going to see now is a visual tribute of the family, and the IT people are having problems. So they're going all right. So yeah, we're just going to see that, and then you'll hear from Kev and Pete, who are going to talk about Friends, and then there'll be another video show, another slideshow. I think we're away. Yeah. Yep. And then we're going to go to the bar after that. So we're good to go. Thanks, guys. We should have got professionals. Isn't it great how all the kids go, you old people are useless at this? I got to go yesterday. No pressure, Jane.
Got another story, Maury?
Yeah, I've got another story.
Tell a little joke.
We're away? Another quick story?
Yeah, another quick story.
Right. I'm just thinking of one. Tony Flanagan and I helped Mum remove, what were I? Tony Flanagan and I helped, this was told, there's a story like this at Bill McIntosh's funeral actually, but Dad had moved this clothesline 3 times around, there's a photo here about this, Dad had moved this clothesline around 3 times at the house in College Street, and he never bothered to chip the concrete off the bottom of the bugger thing. And he buried it about 1 metre deep, and Tony Flanagan and I pulled it out one day because Mum decided that she wanted to move it again for a 4th time. And so we moved out. Those of you who have been to College Street, remember that lawn was like manicured flat, right? So we made a bit of a mess of it because it was hot and we were drinking beer and we smashed all the concrete off at this time because we figured we might have to shift it a 5th time. Anyway, we got most of the concrete away and then Tony and I went and sat in the sparkle. Thanks for turning me on. Right. No, you're right. We went and sat in the sparkle and cooled down for a beer. Next thing we hear the vacuum cleaner. And we go outside and Mum's vacuum cleaning the lawn. Good to go?
Yeah. Should go.
No music? You might have to sing. This is what happens when you pull the home set out and try and make it run again in a different place, and some professionals done it for you. It was going good yesterday. He's away. With the word of my best friend, her lovely hair, her skin so fair, I could go on never end. Oh, I can't go with the girl. I want to tell her how I love her so and hold her in my arms, but then what if she got her and told him so? I could never face either one again. California, so it makes the road make more wine. And I'm sitting in a honky in Chicago, with a broken heart and a on my mind. I'm the man behind the bar for the jukebox, and the music takes me back to Tennessee. Yes, who's a fool in the corner crying when I say,
Chicago, a broken heart is still the same. I matched the man behind the bar for a jukebox, and the music takes me back to the city. When they ask who's the fool in a corner crying, I say, I say,
Come on and do the blue beat, 'cause that's the dance to do. Come on and do the blue beat, and you'll never be blue. Whoa, my baby does the blue beat. I learned to do it too. Come on and do the blue beat, and you'll never be blue. Whoa, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, do the blue beat too. Whoa. We do it in the morning and in the night time too. Come on and do the blue beat, and you'll never be blue. Whoa, it gets into your blood now and makes you really swing. Come on and do the blue beat, keep on your toes and sing. Everybody now, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, a chicky chick, a chicky chicky jang jang, do the blue beat too. Whoa. Everybody do the blue beat, yeah baby do the blue beat. Come on and do it baby, all together do the blue beat. Come on and do the blue beat, yeah come on and do
you can dance, every dance with the guys who kiss you the eye, let them hold you tight. You can smile, every smile for the man who held your hand beneath the pale light. But don't forget who's taking you home, and in his arms you're gonna be. So darling, say the last dance for me. Oh, I know, that the music's fine, like sparkling wine, full of your time. Oh, I know, laugh and sing, around your heart, don't give your heart to anyone. But don't forget who's taking you home, and in a while you're gonna be. So darling, say the last dance for me. Baby, don't you know I love you so? Can't you feel it when we touch?
Sorry to do it the old-fashioned way. So, yeah, there's a friends, a family montage. Kev, do you want to come up and say a few words, and then we'll do a friends montage after Kev and Pete? Top man.
For those that don't know me, I'm Kevin Burrows. I'm one of the Blood Brothers, Schlock and several others. We're down to two now, Pete and myself. So I'd swear, Morris, where are you? I'd swear, Morris, that you were either hacked my computer or read my notes. Because although I'm going to repeat pretty much everything you've said, I'll be much shorter. Okay. Yeah, that's what Sue said too. Maire and I were friends for over 60 years. And I first met Maire, along with Pete, sometime in 1960 when Locke brought her along to a party. And you're quite right, Morris, it was at Rex and Bev England's home. And I think it was their housewarming party at the time. And as usual, the regulars at our parties in those days were mostly Peter Potbury, Dave Geary, Kerry Hollyoak, Alec and Frankie Smith, Gary McIntosh, and I can't remember if Lynn's here, but Lynn was around then, Gary and Joan Vincent, Brian Woodcock, and some others whose names I can't recall. And that night was a very memorable one. Not because we had just met Maire for the first time, but it was also the night that Dave Geary, who had a little too much to drink, as a result of losing one of the drinking games we usually played to keep the party going in those days, he decided to throw up. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to the toilet at the time. And that resulted in a contribution from all of us to have the passage completely re-wallpapered and the carpet shampooed and cleaned. So Maire probably wondered what she'd struck that night, the first night that she met us. But she wasn't put off, and from then on was part of our group and always at Locke's side. That night was the start of a 60-year friendship that lasted up until the time of her passing. Maire was always a most caring and generous person who was always the first to offer her help when tragedy or circumstances came into the lives of her friends or her friends' family, as many of you would have experienced and witnessed. During the past 60 years, I never once heard her gossip or speak ill of anyone. She may have thought about it at times, but she chose not to, or not to me anyway. Maire loved partying and dancing, and over the years, her and I perfected our rock and roll dance moves, right up to and including the time in Julia Wallace retirement village. She still wanted to give it a go, and we did. Maire was always a great support to Locke, keeping their house immaculate, raising two fine and successful children, Tony and Morris, and all the while looking after the admin and office duties of their French polishing and later fine furniture manufacturing business. And then after they sold that business, they started up a successful CI Munro caravan sales, parts and service operation until the government of the day paid that industry by way of new sales taxes that resulted in a severe decline in caravan sales across New Zealand. Locke, throughout the years, could not have operated these businesses without Maire's input and daily support. After Locke's retirement, Maire continued to provide financial support to their household, working as a PA to Ken Clark, as she said, at the hospital, a job that she loved and was very good at. After Locke's passing, she began playing golf regularly and did lots of walking to keep herself fit. She joined Provis, which she thoroughly enjoyed, and became an active member of that group. She loved visiting and being visited by her children. And her grandchildren, whom she was immensely proud of. Maire, throughout her life, took a great deal of pride in her image and appearance, always dressing immaculately whenever in public. And she was really beginning to enjoy retirement, as she had recently bought herself a lovely, near-new red Suzuki Swift, Rego number Nana P. That was her pride and joy. Many of you would have seen the lovely photos taken of her and her new car on Facebook at the time. But things started to change. Small things at first, but as the last 5 years passed, day-to-day activities in life became much more difficult for her. won't go into the details, but only to say that she fought like the trooper she was. Maire never took things too seriously. Her humour, selflessness and kindness will continue to inspire those who have the privilege of knowing her. A loyal friend is worth more than anything in the whole world. Goodbye, Maire. We all loved you very much and will miss you tremendously. You have touched so many lives.
In my rush, I didn't read my notes, and we've got to go back a step.
Organisation 101, like mothers.
So now you're going to hear from the children. Grown-up children. Hey? You've only got 1 minute.
Okay. We feel so lucky to have such a close relationship with our Nana. We wanted to share how special she was to us and how much she impacted who we are. Nana was always close, whether it was across the road on College Street or when we all lived in Auckland. She always knew what was going on in our lives, and not only did she actively involve herself with us kids, but she led an amazing example of how to care and be compassionate to others. If we ever needed someone to talk to or somewhere to stay, she was all ears and beds, or in Robert's case, floors. And the way she lovingly melted ice cream and mixed lollies, phenomenal. Families are the compass that guide us. They are the inspiration to reach great heights and our comforter when we occasionally falter. I was trying to find the words to summarise who Nana was to us, and I think that she was the matriarch, this saying in our family, like Woody was to the generation before her. Sorry. Touching on this love, although Nana didn't see it, she and Woody shared some similarities, and it leads me nicely into a memory that I want to share with you all. For those of you that saw Nana towards the end, you know that those special moments of the Maire you know, when those special moments of the Maire you know that shine through, they were to cherish. This fond memory is when Andrew and I travelled to Parlane to share our news of Mackenzie's expected arrival.
We went into Julia Wallace and sat Nana down in one of the more intimate lounges. Nana, Andrew and I have come to share some special news with you. So slowly, a smile creeps across her face and her eyes light up. We are expecting a baby. I'm pregnant. Nana jumped up and instantly, with me ready... Sorry, I shouldn't laugh before it happens. With me ready for the inevitable hug that was coming my way. But Nana bypassed me and went to Andrew on the other side of the room for a very happy embrace. I did get a secondary hug, but I just remember how much it cracked me up that she went to Andrew before me. Jokes aside, Nana was so happy that day. When we went back, she just kept saying to everyone that would listen that her granddaughter was having a baby, but I will never forget that moment that we shared. Our Nana P, wasn't she just the life of the party? I can only remember her getting right involved, laughing with her contagious smile, probably one of the last to leave the dance floor, and always keen for a good dress up. My personal favourite was her dressing up in a panda onesie, not for any particular reason I seem to remember. It may have just been due to the cold, balmy Auckland climate during that time on one of her visits. Another quality that was the fact that she loved getting to know people. She always made such an effort to talk to everyone, to meet all our friends, to find out all their stories. I remember this one time she made a particular effort to get to know a rather pretty topless waiter. She was not distracted from the pleasant aesthetic in front of her, but she managed to find out that this young man was actually stripping his way through business school. Was an A-grade student with a great work ethic. That's our Nana, never judged a book by its cover, and much like her mother Woody, was easily distracted by a male's attention. Our Nana was a massive part of our lives growing up. She and Papa supported Mum and Dad massively, bringing out two beautiful twin girls. Just read it off the paper. And a mischievous blind boy. She absolutely loved being a part of our lives and loved us all with a nurturing passion. Whether she was there for us growing up as a willing audience for our three-piece Parlane pop band, we composed our own original music and wrote our own lyrics, did you know? Or offering her home to me to use when I was a physio student on my first clinical placement in Wanganui. For this particular trip, my car broke down on the trip down from Auckland, and Nana and Papa were willing and banded together to help me get through. Papa and Stu alternated driving me from Palmy to Wanganui every day, and Nana would always wake up before me with a delicious continental breakfast ready to go. I never knew such hospitality. This is an example of one of the many times Nana was there to support me. And she was a massive support, whether it was going through late night phone calls to help me through heartbreak or weekends spent together in Auckland and in Palmy. These are special moments spent that have created some of my fondest memories. Our Nana P was such a special woman. Although her heart has stopped beating, her spirit will continue just the same through all of us.
Mate, you're up.
Alright, hi everyone. My name's Pete Geary. I've been asked by Morris and family to speak today about Maire and what she meant to the Geary family. The Geary and the Parlanes go way back. We started in Palmerston North, and Maire was instrumental in bringing us together. My dad and mum were best man and lady at each other's weddings, so I believe. So it's a very close friendship. She met my great-grandparents, and over the years, she actually got to know 6 generations of our family. That's something to treasure. Maire was seen as the matriarch of the Parlane Geary families way back to when we were young. Maire took on the role of the second mum to us all. She installed into our lives love and respect. We were always very much part of her family. Shaking. When I was asked to speak today, I called my brothers and sisters so they could give me the memories of Maire. And all 3 said going away with Maire and the family to Ohau Channel at Christmas time was one of the best memories, as it was for me. It was what we called their annual pilgrimage. We would attach the boat to the car and off we would go, excited about spending much of our holidays with Maire and her family. And this continued for many years. During these times, Maire was our mum, and all 4 of us Geary kids loved her to bits. Possibly what I remember most was she never told us off. Maire would leave that to the scary lock. For those that knew him, he did a good job of keeping us on the straight and narrow. We would arrive at Ohau Channel after Dad had put up with us 4 kids in the car, pitch the tent and set up the boat while the Parlanes set up their caravans. A caravan that we were always in awe of. It was like a mansion. Over the years, we were joined by family friends, Popberries, Burrows, Woodcocks, and a number of other families. I personally remember the card games the adults used to play, 500. It was legendary amongst them all, and they would play many a night while on holiday. Maire would often complain and accuse the men of cheating, and I think she was probably right. Locke and Maire used to visit us in Auckland, and as kids we looked forward to their visits. As we looked forward to seeing Maire. We used to sit with her for hours and tell her of our latest adventures and important milestones, while she would tell us all about the news from Parlane. I have a couple of special memories of Maire. One in particular was the day after my 21st. I just built a yacht and was keen to take both Maire and Locke out. The day turned a little rough and Maire was banished below deck. Personally, as a youngster, the sail was great. A bit of wind against the tide, heavy seas made it exciting. But alas, for Maire, I think not. I would pop my head down below and ask, "Hey Maire, you okay?" And she would smile and say, "Yes, this is so much fun." But what I failed to notice was the white face and the clenched fist. She was shit scared. She knew how much I wanted to show her how great my yacht could sail. Another occasion, Maire and Locke just had returned from a holiday to Hawaii. And I was excited to tell her about a new girl I'd met. I wanted to introduce her to this girl, as I thought she was going to be special in my life, and I needed Maire's seal of approval. Maire was good at checking out people and soon had a feel of what they were like. Not long after Maire had met her, she took me off to the kitchen and said, "This one's a keeper." As only Maire could do, she and the new girlfriend hit it off straight away. That girl, Sharon, is now my wife and has been for 32 years. Sharon and I decided to travel to Palmerston early on our relationship and spent time with the Parlane family. And I remember arriving at College Street, a big hug, warm welcome, and of course a cup of tea. Within 15 minutes of arriving, Maire had suited Sharon out in a leotard and was heading out the door to the local jazzercise class, much to my amusement. Sharon didn't stand a chance of saying no. My grandfather, Bill, was a man many looked up to. He always had a soft spot for Maire. He would often say she had a lovely nature and cared about the Gearys throughout the years. She was always so interested in what you were doing, what was happening in our lives, and would sit there and listen with that smile she was remembered for. Maire became a dear friend to our kids, and especially to their grandmother Ruth. Often Maire would come to visit us in Auckland and spend hours down with Ruth chatting about life and their kids and grandkids. There was always the constant sound of laughter coming from the house and the kettle being boiled, numerous cups of tea. Maire was so proud of her children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she would have no hesitation in talking about them for hours. In closing, one regret I have is Maire did not meet the next generation within our family. My grandson was born last year, and I know she would have loved meeting him and telling him all about the generations of Gearys that she'd got to meet. I know Maire was so proud of the special bond I have with my best friend and older brother, Morris.
Also the truth.
And we grew up together and continue to be best mates. Tony is also very close to both myself and my siblings, and she's another sister in our family. Like Maire, I'm pleased and proud that the Gearys and Parlanes continue to be friends, a large family that continues to enjoy holidays at Christmas time, on a lake, attend birthdays, and most importantly, watch the next generation of kids growing into best friends. Maire, you're always best dressed, you were always smiling and gracious, but most of all, you were and still are very much loved, part of our family. We will never forget the precious memories with you.
What's on your list?
Hey,
What's on your list, isn't it?
oh, you get the video thing, eh?
Yeah.
Wanna do that now?
You want to try?
So guys, we're going to do another video montage. Yeah?
I'll do it.
So here we go. The pressure. Just the two, not top one.
Train whistle blowing makes a sleepy noise. nights underneath their blankets, all the girls and boys, rock and roll and ride, all along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Driver at the engine, fireman rings the bell, Sandman swings the lantern to show the toll is well. Rock and roll and ride, all along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Maybe it is raining where our train will ride. All the little travelers are warm and snug inside. Rock and roll and ride, all along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Somewhere there is sunshine, somewhere there is day, somewhere there is Morningtown, many miles away. Rock and roll and ride, all along the way, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Rock and roll and ride, all along the way, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Want your kiss, 'cause I just can't miss. But a girl at your like, come on and be my lady. Good luck, John, you sweet delight. Oh, good luck, John, on my own. To hope, tonight. Don't silver dollar, rabbit's foot on a string. Happiness and your own caress, no rabbit's foot can bring. Come on and be my lady. Good luck, John, you sweet delight. Oh, good luck, John, hanging on my arm. To hope, tonight. If I found a lucky penny, I toss it across the bay. Your love is worth all the gold on earth. No wonder that I say, come on and be my lady. Good luck, John, you sweet delight. I want a good luck, John, hanging on my own. To hope, tonight.
The tears I cried
It'll work. It'll work. Okay, that's sort of the end of our tribute. Thank you for tolerating us. Yeah, I'm going to read this note I got from Uncle Graham in Australia. I have to put my glasses on because it's on a small scale. So this is from Graham and Carmel, which is Mum's older brother. As we cannot be with you today, we thank you for gathering here to respect, for the respect you show to my sister Maire. We'd like to thank us for your kind care to Maire during her last years and keeping us updated. I'd especially like to thank you, Tony, for bringing Maire to Aussie when she returned to see, before she went to care. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's from Uncle Graham, which is pretty cool. We didn't really want to have loads and loads of people speaking because we want to speak all the time. But no, we didn't know how to run it we just wanted to have a tribute thing, and so there's plenty of time to chat to everybody. What we're going to do now is we're going to leave Mum sitting here, and at a normal funeral, you know, you'd spend a bit of time coming up, and we still want that to happen, but don't all rush to the front because it's obviously a small place. So what we're going to do is we'll ask you to sort of leave out here, and then we'll leave Mum here with pictures going and stuff. And the tributes that we asked you to bring with the photo, it'd be really cool if you bought those and dropped them in the thought basket for us, because we'll put them together with the book in the end, and then we won't just keep the book in. Yeah, you want to say something, Wayne? Yeah, our Uncle Wayne's going to say something as well. But yeah, sorry, mate. So when we go, because it's a bit cramped, we'll head out that way and then try and leave this room so we can break it up a bit, but just come back in and talk to Mum. So, Wayne, come over and say something, mate.
Well, first of all, those that don't know me, I'm Murray's brother. I come from Wellington. I know a lot of faces that I see, but at my age, by the hair, I forget names. I even did that when I was playing rugby, so it's probably, probably too many hits in the head or something like that. But first of all, I'd just like to thank you people for coming along today. The massive turnout. And the second thing I'd like you to say is that I hope all you guys have a safe trip home to your destination. So, so once again, thank you very much.
Okay, so the ones at the front, we're not going to rush away, but the guys at the front, you can move out this way. We aren't really going to open the bar here. The bar's open though, so you can buy a drink if you want. But Mum's shouting at the Palmerston North Club, National 2 Club, sorry. In Linton Street. So, but feel free to have a drink here if you want. We'll just mingle. We need to leave here probably in about 40 minutes. We've got some sandwiches and there's some drinks. So those of you who are in the back, maybe a couple of younger guys, can you move the chairs so people can get, because they want to serve the food on the pool table. And that's the end. Thank you all for coming. It's a big turnout. Thank you.